Hi everyone and welcome back to the channel. My name is Florence and this is the One More Book podcast channel. Before we get into it, if you love deep, thoughtful book discussions and just discovering stories from all over the world, make sure to like, subscribe and turn on notifications so that you don't miss out whenever I post a video. I am here to do my April monthly wrap-up, the books that I read in April, and I have just realized that I did not do a wrap-up for March, so that will be my next video. April was an amazing reading month for me because, let's just say, the books that I read or the stories that I read were very layered and some were emotional and also very, very informational. So I got a different mix of things, which was lovely, and I did not get bored, which is something that I like. So let's just start with the first book that I read. It's not in any order. I'm just going through my list the way I have them written down. So the first book that I read is Universality by Natasha Brown. I have a separate video just for Universality, a full review on it, so you can watch it. I will try and link it here or here on my channel to watch the full video. But this is just a short summary of the book in itself. So this book is very subtle. It's not a book that shouts. It's a book that really comes in it steals in without you noticing it. It can actually fool you, especially from the cover. You'll be like, what is this? And even the storyline, you're just like, what is this? But it really packs a punch. So Natasha Brown is an author who I had no experience with, but from what I've gathered is that she gained recognition because of her first book, The Assembly, which went ahead to even win so many awards because of how very controlled, but also her writing style is very minimalist and of course very controlled. So I think that's why it hit people by surprise. I think that in the way she writes, she leans into philosophical questions about identity, of course, about race and about elitism and classism and how we navigate systems that really claim to treat people equally but don't at all, clearly don't at all. And that's what is really seen in this book, Universality. What I really found striking about the book is how detached the narrative is. As you are reading it, it's like you are this being on the outside, seeing how things are going on in the book. Even the narrator is part of the story, but they feel so distant. It's almost very critical, which I think she does quite well. But the distance does actually forces you to sit within your discomfort, this discomfort that you feel as you're reading it. You're not being like manipulated emotionally or guided. You just have to work on it on yourself. It's quite an interesting art of writing. It starts with a simple story. There's a fight that happens and someone is injured using this gold bar, and the gold bar is what is on the cover of the book. They're attacked with this gold bar. So there's a reporter, an investigative reporter who is narrating what happens, because they come in and they interview everyone that is at the scene. And so this is how the story is built, because she's trying to find out what happened and how it happened. So the book is not plot heavy at all. It's more of just ideas coming together and creating these internal tensions. So if you're someone who likes introspective reads, almost like a form of abstract fiction, this will be something for you. It's not something that I went in looking for. This was actually a book club pick, so I had no idea what I was getting myself into, but I actually really, really enjoy it. It's not character driven at all or fast paced. It is very, very, like I said, very, very cold, very cold in nature, but quite interesting, makes you really think. And I really, really enjoyed it. I think I gave it a 4.5 stars. Just the 0.5 stars was because it made me work for it, but I really, really enjoyed it and would highly, highly recommend it. The second book that I read is Can Feminism Be African? A Most Paradoxical Question by Mina Salami. And this one I had to take my time with. I actually listened to the audiobook version, but I've realized that nonfiction doesn't work for me as audiobooks because I'm someone who wants to annotate my books. I want to stop and research. And when I'm listening to a book, I cannot stop. That's why I had to borrow the physical copy from my friend. She has, I gave it back to her already, but now I could actually look at the things that she was talking about. First of all, Mina Salami is, she's, I would say a researcher. Her work is well researched. She's of Finnish and Nigerian descent, and she's lived in Hamburg. We've met her a couple of times, but she also lives in the UK. And you can tell the research that she put into this book. She is challenging these frameworks that surround feminism because the book is, it's like a collection of her thoughts in which she's questioning why is feminism often defined through a Western lens. And she uses personal anecdotes, stories that she's had, but also years and years of research that she has done, books that she's read. She mentions so many amazing authors or philosophers or words that are historical in this book, and really, really allows you to go into the spiritual part, the community part, and the intuition part of feminism. And of course, defining what exactly is Africa. Africa is not just a space, but a feeling, because people who are not even on the continent, they still feel African. So people who maybe have parents or grandparents who are African, they are not on the continent, but they still feel African. So it's like she said, a paradoxical question on what exactly is African feminism. She positions the question in a way that there's valid forms of knowledge. It is wide and you get to collect what works for you. And actually, she does not answer the question. You need to actually read the book, and maybe it awakens the thoughts in you. And to be honest, it wasn't the easiest of read because it is very dense, especially if you're not someone who is used to theoretical writing. I am not. So I had to take time. But I think when I finished it, I felt rewarded. It was rewarding and it opened up my mind. It didn't answer anything. On the opposite, it opened up more questions and my desire to read more into this topic. So this is the kind of book that you find yourself underlining every sentence, like quotes, and at the back, the glossary. She has so many books and papers and documents that she got information from or further reading. So this I think this book belongs in a library because it is like, it will be a source. It's like a book where you get information from. And I'm definitely going to get a physical copy for myself because I just want to have it to go back into it. I gave it a 5 stars. This was a 5-star read for me. The next book is The Greatest Story Ever Told by Bear Grylls. This is another one that is a big shift, was a big shift for me. It's actually like a historical telling of the path that Jesus took. And this was also a book club pick. That's why it's not something that I would even pick out for myself. I did not even know who Bear Grylls was. I've heard that he is a nature writer. He like goes on expeditions. So this is also just one of the genres that he writes in. So in this book, of course, we follow Jesus, but we follow Jesus. The narration of the book is done by the people around Jesus, and nothing, he does not say a word. Well, he is not part of the narration. So we meet the different disciples, we meet his mother, his father, we meet Mary Magdalene, we meet everyone who was, some of the people who are around him, the significant people who are mentioned in the Bible, and they are talking about him, about his days on this earth. And as someone, I was raised Catholic, I was raised as a Christian. There's really nothing new about the story of Jesus that I didn't know. But I think listening to the different witnesses speaking about him, it felt different. It felt like I think there's a movie in Germany. It's called Act Blinkwinkel. It's about a crime that happened, and there were witnesses. So the film was shot from different points of view, and this is how I felt when I was reading this. I know, totally different, but that is what it brought back to me, because everyone was viewing him differently with their own personal feelings, and it reminded me so much of growing up in Kenya, growing up in Kisumu, when we would go for school holidays and our parents would dump us at the village with my grandparents and then come back to work. Now I understand. Schools were closed. What were they supposed to do with us? And we used to go to our local village church. So every day in the evening, we would go for choir practice. So during vacation, we were choir members. And I remember all these songs, because Catholics, we take a lot of songs. Our songs are exactly like storytelling from the Bible. So as I was reading these stories, like about Zacharias who climbed the tree, or Ananias and Peter, there were specific songs that came to mind. It was a nice memory to remember. And I really, really enjoyed this book, totally out of my, I wouldn't say even comfort zone, but just nothing that I would pick up by myself. But I listened to the audiobook, which was done wonderfully, and I really, really enjoyed it. The book is less about theology and more about the meaning and the story behind it. It almost felt like, well, fiction. Some might call it fiction, some might call it non-fiction, but it felt like reading a work of fiction. Yeah, the enjoyment of the book will depend on your openness on the subject matter. And for me, I went in open. So there was nothing like a deep analysis and all that. No, it was very, very, well, it wasn't light, because it ends at the crucifixion, of course, which is harrowing. Told, like, if you watched Passion of Christ, this is the telling of it is almost the same. But it's not like, yeah, you can still read it. It's not like, I don't know, deep, and no, it's just very reflective and also motivational. It just works, and I enjoyed reading it, and I gave it 4 stars. Then I read The Women by Kristin Hanna, and this one, emotional damage. Kristin Hanna is known for writing very immersive and emotional historical fictional books. I read The Nightingale, I think 2 years ago. Still breaks my heart until now. And the women is no different. It's not different. It follows women, especially one particular woman, Frances, who decides to join the Vietnam War because something happens in her family. So there are a group of women who are serving in the Vietnam War as nurses. And what I appreciated the most about this book is that it centers these voices which we rarely hear about. I had no idea about women who served in the Vietnam War. And of course, as we read the book, we also see the reaction of Americans about this war and about the people who served in this war. The first half is very emotive and chaotic, and of course, with the intensity of wars, she does not hold back as she tells us the gory details of war, which I think should not be watered down because war is war. And then slowly later in the second half, when the characters return home, that is when now she goes in deep. Like you thought you were crying in the first half, the second half is even deeper. And I think the contrast between the two parts, you see the service, you see recognition, you see trauma, you see silence. It is a heavy read, but a very, very important read, very, very emotional. There's a bit of melodrama, which is kind of Kristin Anna's style, but honestly, it works because, the emotional stakes are pretty high, and she knows what she's doing. She really knows what she's doing. So I would definitely say if you like The Nightingale, this will definitely be one for you. I'm looking into reading the next book by her. I'm not so sure. I have to find out if my library has one. This I borrowed from my library, but I think I need space. I need to give my tear ducts time to come up with more tears because it's just pour. Yeah, but definitely a 5-star read for me. The next book that I read was The Manual for Good Vibes by Lola Jaye, and this is the author of her previous book is called The Attic Child, which is also very, very popular. So this is a historical fictional book that follows a young woman. She's Nigerian, and the story starts when she's getting married off at 16 into an abusive marriage, and luckily she manages to escape with the help of family and a loved one. And she moves to Britain, to the UK. So in the UK, we follow her. She lives a very colorful life in the UK. Ends up even being a writer, being accused of lying to the public because she wrote under the pseudonym of a white woman. So it was very, very interesting. I love how Lola Jaye blends historical fiction with a more contemporary lens, because we think about the feminist movements and surviving in a patriarchal world and women and having children, and it explores migration and explores the expectations of women, especially wives, what the society expects of them and also what they expect of themselves, and how these have changed and evolved over time, because we also meet a descendant of Temi. The main character is Temi. There's a second character called Landry, and we also follow her story, though I think that Temi's story is a bit more in focus than Landry, but still Landry's story is also part of the book. And you can just tell, I think, the time and the research that went into this book, because it's done so flawlessly. It's very psychologically layered. There's a lot of focus on internal conflict. I love how the characters were talking to themselves. I love how when characters take time and think about things on their own, they're trying to find their identity, and also the pressure that the society had on them to conform. And what I loved also is the question that I think is still coming up even now, of what a good wife is, and if you're a good wife, at what cost does this come? So it's not like a fast read, though I read it very quickly. It's not like fast paced. It's much more reflective, but also very thought provoking, and one that I enjoyed reading, and I gave it a 4 stars. And next, I read Kin by Tayari Jones, and this I also borrowed from my library. I am so happy for the library. I'm so happy for the library. When I went online and saw it and I booked it, and when I got the email that it was there, I rushed and picked it up, dropped all my books, every book that I was reading, and started reading Kin immediately. And in this book, Tayari Jones, the author of Kin, who is also the author of An American Marriage and something called Silver Sparrow. I haven't read Silver Sparrow, but I read American Marriage years ago. It was actually quite popular. But in this book, Tayari Jones takes us on a very emotionally charged journey in which we accompany 2 motherless girls. So there is Annie and there is Venice. And these 2 girls are born and brought up in a rural town in Louisiana called Honeysuckle. And Venice, is brought up by a very strict auntie after her parents die. And this auntie wishes for her to one day leave Honeysuckle and go to college and get a better life, live a better life than what is available in Honeysuckle. While on the other hand, Annie, who is also motherless, was raised by her grandmother, a woman who is totally exhausted of raising other people's children. And so it begins. These 2 girls, 2 peas in a pod, they are 2 cradle friends. So they decide to go on this journey separately as they are trying to, they embark on this journey in search of mothers and also in search of self at the same time. And this book to me felt very heavy laden with themes of friendship, of course, themes of family, motherhood, womanhood, what it is to exist in a patriarchal world as a woman. Of course, racism, because this is South, and what is the true meaning of kin? What does it mean when you say kin? I absolutely devoured this book from the beginning to the end. It's an amazingly beautiful book with so much emotions, so many lessons, so much advice. I felt like these girls did not have mothers, but the book was filled with so many mothering moments. That's like, even someone who has a mom, there was still, when you read it, the women in this book were all mothering us in one way or another. This book to me was unputdownable, and one that will definitely stay with me for a very, very long time. I borrowed it from the library, but I am definitely going to buy my copy because I'm seeing myself reaching for it again, especially on Mother's Day. I think this would make an amazing Mother's Day gift for yourself or for your mom or for your caretaker if they are readers. I think this would make an amazing gift. Another book that I read and absolutely loved is Good People by Padmina Sabit. And this is actually a debut book. It just came out recently, and I read it together with the Book of Saints book club. Wow. Another surprisingly good book. So this is one of those books that I actually went into without reading the blurb. I knew this is a book club pick. I need to read it. So I got the audiobook version, and I think it worked out great because the surprise effect made for a very interesting reading experience. So in this book, we meet Zora Sharaf. Zora Sharaf is in the eyes, like there's a way that they say it. It's an Afghanistan family or an Afghanistan story, Afghan story. Yeah, and they say she was the black in the eyes of her parents, which means she was like the apple of their eyes, as the author puts it. So Zora Sharaf is a teenage girl. She's an Afghani girl growing up in a very affluent part of Virginia in the US as part of this successful, rich, and happy family that migrated from Afghanistan to the US and made it really big. But when tragedy strikes, the curtain is drawn to show us a story about migration, a story about community, religion, parenting, teenagehood, Islamophobia, racism, classism, envy, family, culture, and an immigrant experience that I rarely read about or is rarely talked about. This book was very gripping from the start to the finish. I found myself playing judge and jury as I was reading it because I was just like, why did you do this? Did you do this? I was suspecting everyone and I was terrible as I was reading this. I turned into Nancy Drew, trying to find out, okay, who done it? Where are the clues? I was just trying to figure out all the clues and evidences. It also made me sit down and think about my own prejudices against certain individuals, not only in the book but also in my community or even in the news. When I watch news or when I read articles, like I'm always judging things without knowing exactly what happened. And also it made me think about which news are we shown? Which information is filtered and given to us? Like, we cannot believe everything that we are told. There's always something behind it. And yeah, I really, really enjoyed this book. Made me really think deeply and made me really start to be distrustful about the stories that I hear. And I remember when we were at the book club meeting and the author talked about this book taking her 10 years to finish. I was just like, I can see why, because there's so many characters, but it is so well done. And I think if you read it, I think there are over 50 characters, but try not to be so concerned about who is who and just go with the flow. You don't really need the specific ones. They are main characters. You can still follow the story without having to remember the exact names of the characters. Absolutely, absolutely loved this. I gave it a 4 stars. The next book that I read was The Marriage Monitoring Aunties Association by Ola Awonubi. And this I also read with the book club, with the Bookmark Book Club. I love the cover of this book. I do not think that I would have picked this book by myself because I'm not the biggest fan of the storyline, but because it was a book club pick, I had to. I couldn't say no. So it started out as a fun read, but then along the way it turned a bit comical. So in this book, we follow a Nigerian British woman called Jaye, who is almost turning 50. She's single, she's childless, she's a career woman, owns her own house, but the biggest thing that is missing from her life is she doesn't have a partner, she doesn't have children. And she's a Christian woman. She lives in this community, the Nigerian community, who believe that you need to be married and have children at some point. So she hasn't had a lot of luck. Well, she hasn't had luck in her dating life. And now she's struggling. She's almost 50 and she's not seeing like a rainbow at the end of the tunnel. But of course, there's also all this pressure coming from the church, from her mom, and from her relatives. And to me, the book felt very, very cliche. Like it was really, really on the nose, like a black woman single. This is all she's thinking about. At some point, I was just like, please stop. Please stop. I cannot take this anymore. I think the parts where she was trying to bring in humor in a commentary form, it now even felt very comical. It wasn't even funny. It It was like one of those Tyler Perry's movies. I've never watched anything by Tyler Perry. Maybe that's why. But I think that just like Tyler Perry's movies have their audiences, this book will also has its own audience, but I am definitely not one of them at all. I did not enjoy this book. I think I gave it a 2.5 stars. It is an accessible read, quite easy to read. I listened to it on audiobook, but it wasn't for me. No, it wasn't for me, unfortunately. And then last but not least is Tu Dadu in Memoriam by Paul Marshall. And I believe she was she was originally from the Barbados, and then she moved to the US and lived there and taught there. She's one of the well-known Caribbean female authors from Barbados, and this is a short story that is included in the book Daughters of Africa. Daughters of Africa, the older edition, which is edited by Margaret Busby. We are reading that with the book club, so we read a story every month. We have a long way to go, but it's amazing. I love discovering authors that I had no idea about. And in this story, it's almost autobiographical because the author narrates how she came home from New York with her family. She visited her grandmother. So she traveled with her sister and her mom and arrived in Barbados, and they were picked up at the airport by their grandmother. And it is so, I love child narrators because they can be so honest, and she is so honest with how she describes the physical features of her grandmother. And then later we see this sort of conflict or competition between grandmother and granddaughter as each is trying to outdo the other, which I think signifies the conflict between traditions and a modern world. And we see the traditional part. They both have their good and their bad, but it's the way you look at them. And I just love how the granddaughter and grandmother kept on having this competition, and one is telling the other why their side is much better. I loved how the author uses description of plants, of the banana leaves and the garlic and the sugar cane, and how the plants are fighting for sunlight. It signifies so much more than what is simply written. I enjoy that part about Caribbean authors. They really, when they talk about the environment, about the plants, I think it also reminds us that things like colonialism and white supremacy all have an effect not just on humans as the only living things, but also on the environment, on the plants. So that was a good reminder. Like what really stayed with me in this story was the symbolism, progress against tradition. It is very subtle, but also very, very powerful. A short story that, oh wow, set against a backdrop of cultural identity and colonial influence that I think anyone in the diaspora can relate to. So it is one that will stay with me and has made me be very interested to read more works by her. I believe I saw a book by her at our library, at my local library, called Brown Girl Reading or something. And I think Hadija told me it also has a child narrator. And I love child narrators. I just love how they just speak their minds and they tell you to decide to do with what they've told you. And I love their openness and their confidence, and they do not fear consequences. And I think that's how we should go through life and also go through as we read. It opens up your mind. So this is one that will make you just sit after you finish reading it and just sit there for a moment and think about it. Definitely an amazing read. It's a short story. Give it a 5 stars. Will definitely love to read more from the author. So as you have heard, April's reading was very introspective, and there were a lot of books that they weren't like covered with big twists or like fast plots. I did not have that this month, but they were more about like ideas and symbolism and identity and emotional depth. And I think I needed that in April. It really, made me happy. I love months like this. I feel like reading is not just for entertainment. It helps you grow, and it helps me grow, and I am here for the growth. So that's my April reading month wrap up. Let me know in the comment sections which one of these books have you read, or have you read anything by these authors, or which ones are you adding to your TBR? Sorry, not sorry. And if you've enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And of course, share it with a fellow reader. And I'll see you in the next one. Happy reading and bye.